Hello and welcome to Tête à Tête, France 24's flagship interview show. Our guest today is David Ignatius. He is a famous columnist for the Washington Post, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Mark.
In September of last year, you wrote a column headlined, "President Biden should not run again in 2024. It didn't go down well with the president and his entourage. But when you watched the first debate between the president and Donald Trump, you must have thought, I told you so."
So I didn't think I told you so much as that the evidence was there in front of everyone nearly a year ago. My column last September summarized a poll that had been taken the previous month in August of last year that said that 77% of the American public and 69% of Democrats thought that Biden was too old to run for another term. That was nearly a year ago. The public view was clear. Rather than accept and deal with that public statement, the Biden campaign chose to, I think, engage in a campaign of denial. The argument was, no, it's not President Biden who has troubles with his memory, his cognition, it's Trump. And in our binary system, it couldn't be true that both Trump and Biden had problems that, in my view, should have disqualified both. So we arrived at the debate really with the Biden campaign having resisted this public judgment, the evidence that was before, I think, everyone's eyes for a year, that Joe Biden was, however fine a president. I should say, Mark, to your viewers, I think Biden has done a very good job in most respects, but he is aging, and the idea that 4 more years he will still be a strong and effective president, I thought stretched credulity.
Right.
But the message wasn't received a year ago when I wrote it, and I think people are finally, with a sudden, stark realization, understanding that it's true.
So all of a sudden, we're seeing reports emerge that the president doesn't work before 10 a.m., after 4 p.m., that he has attention lapses and so on, as if this was a secret and it's now coming out in the open and sending Democrats to worry, panic, maybe find a solution.
So there is a sense of panic in Washington these days. We'll see how it plays out over coming days. The president is trying to convince people one last time that he's still sharp, he can do it. He's surrounded by his family, who are insisting that the campaign advisors are to blame, that good old Joe is just fine. But I personally don't think this will last. I think this will lead to something different. The question is whether Vice President Harris will take over. That in effect Biden will anoint her as a successor. She'll take the money the campaign has raised and will become the nominee, or whether we'll have a more wide open process at the Democratic convention in August. I personally hope for the latter, but at this point, it's very hard to predict what will happen.
So in your eyes, clearly, Joe Biden today is unfit for office.
So I think there's enough sign of difficulty, cognitive problems, remembering things, the way in which he moves, a number of doctors have told me, is associated with significant conditions. I'm not a doctor, so I won't name them, but there are lots of reasons to be concerned. I just have been doing some historical reading about what happened when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke in 1919 and in the tense bargaining over post-World War I Europe. And the White House was in a state of denial. It refused to issue any statements whatsoever about Woodrow Wilson's condition, other than cheery notes about the president is recovering from the severe stroke. He was paralyzed on one side. And the person leading that was his wife, Edith. She insisted that this be concealed. similarly reading about President Franklin D. Roosevelt in early 1945, before he finally collapsed. It was clear to everyone who visited him that this was a dying man. He couldn't possibly continue much longer. But again, this was concealed from the public. It was a shock when FDR was announced dead. So there's a tradition of keeping health secrets of public figures. This is true in France, many countries, not just the United States. But I think we've been seeing some of that.
Right. You mentioned the wife of Woodrow Wilson. Let's mention the wife of Joe Biden. She reportedly was the most furious after you wrote the column last year. And she said just at a fundraiser just a few days ago, Joe isn't just the right person for the job. He is the only person for the job. Is she the one really pushing him to run again? Or is it because he doesn't want to see Donald Trump back at the White House at all costs?
So the Bidens, Joe and Jill both, have believed that Joe Biden is the person who can defeat Trump, and that's his mission in life. He did it in 2020. He did it during the 2022 midterms. So they've stuck by him. I wrote in my recent column that loyalty is an admirable quality, except when it disserves the people that we love. There is a kind of loyalty that suppresses the truth about the situation for the person we love. You stand so close that you almost prevent the person from admitting and accepting the situation. I worry about that here. The people around Joe Biden, Mark, have for many years believed that Biden was always viewed as inadequate, that every time people underestimated him, every time he came back from what looked like it was going to be defeat. So they say, here we are again. People are doubting the strengths of the president. They're insisting that he can't do it. But we've shown in the past that that's wrong. So there's some of that Biden underdog spirit, chip on the shoulder, we say, I think is part of the situation now.
Right. I mean, in addition, maybe to some pressure from Democrats, openly or privately, there could be another element, the polls. I mean, some polls are showing already that the gap between Trump and Biden is widening. It was around 3%, now it's 6%. This maybe could be the decisive factor, don't you think?
So I think for politicians, as for everyone, self-interest in the end prevails. If Democrats see Biden growing significantly weaker politically, they're going to think not simply about his defeat, but about the prospective loss of the House and the Senate and total Republican control of Congress, along with conservative control of the Supreme Court. And I think that will add to the panic and will be a reason to make changes. The Democrats desperately want to hold the House. I have heard several House members have called me saying, we can't keep silent much longer. We're going to have to speak out. We're going to have to tell the truth about Biden's weakness because of our own political needs as House members running for re-election.
Obviously, you mentioned Kamala Harris. She's the vice president. She's not popular. Some are saying this is because Joe Biden made sure she wouldn't be popular. Is she the only other option? Some names have been bandied around in the last few days, Michelle Obama and so on. I mean, do you see any other realistic option that could make Biden accept to pull back and have a chance against Donald Trump?
So I think there are many options in the Democratic Party, and I think Kamala Harris is one of the weaker options. She was not a successful candidate in 2020. She has not really succeeded as vice president in getting traction with the American public. She has been less popular than Biden. That may be changing now as the president's numbers fall. But we have many other very talented politicians. The governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, has brought together what we call a purple state mixed blue and red and done a very good job as governor. The Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, is one of the most effective cabinet secretaries we've had in years. She's jump-started our program to manufacture the most advanced computer chips in the U.S., and done that almost single-handedly. The governor of Maryland, a young man, Wes Moore, extraordinary record. He began at a community college. He went to Johns Hopkins, was Phi Beta Kappa, won a Rhodes Scholarship to study in Oxford, became an Army Ranger, and fought and commanded in Afghanistan in severe combat, came back, ran a huge nonprofit. Remarkable person by every measure. When I think about Governor Wes Moore debating Donald Trump, Wes Moore would eat Donald Trump alive. So there are all sorts of people in the party who could run. What's needed is a decision that there are 2 months remaining, that a wide open campaign won't be destructive, but will be healthy for the Democrats, will wake the country up to all the possibilities. Personally, I think that's a preferable course than just hunkering down in the White House, either with Joe Biden or Vice President Harris.
Just as a conclusion, this clearly makes Donald Trump the favorite.
No question. If you had to bet today, you'd say Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. I personally shudder to think what that means. I'm sure our European allies must think a person who seems to have limited commitment at best to NATO becoming president. Quite disturbing possibilities. We're going to need good leadership in our military and our intelligence services at every level of our national life to get through another 4 years of Trump, if that's what the public decides.
David Ignatius, that's all we have time for. I want to thank you very much for appearing here on France 24 from Washington, D.C., and I want to thank you all for watching this show.